Geltzie loves the NBA. We love talking hoops with him. What can you say about Jimmy Butler, Geltzie?
No one turns it up in the playoffs like Jimmy B. I mean, that's what I'll tell you. It was funny. It was, Pablo Torre on Dan Levitart's podcast had a whole thing yesterday about how the way Butler turns it up in the playoffs, it has to make the league office uncomfortable because he doesn't do that in the regular season. Listen, he did play 64 games this year. He's going to be probably a second-team All-NBA guy, at worst a third-team All-NBA guy. But he elevates his game in the playoffs. Why does that make the league office uncomfortable? I think it's fantastic. And you know what? The Heat come in here as an 8 seed, and they make noise. I mean, it's an unbelievable part about this. You just see Milwaukee in 5 without Tyler Hero. Now, again, there's certain things that happen and go on and not having Hero that I don't want to oversimplify it, because Duncan Robinson plays more of a role in the absence of Hero because he's much easier to hide. But here's where I'll give, and listen, Butler's been amazing. He's unguardable at this point. But can Mike Budenholzer do something different in trying to defend him? I mean, it took him getting 56 on Drew Holiday? And let's just roll Drew Adam again for an entire other game. There's no double teaming. Jay Crowder can't get off the bench. He doesn't put Giannis on him. Why don't you put Giannis on him and see how that goes? But you have to start. Butler is so comfortable. He might as well be sitting back with his feet up, okay, sipping a martini and a lazy boy, and how comfortable he is on the basketball court, what the Bucks did. No one making him uncomfortable with anything. And for Jimmy, he's a killer. He's going to keep attacking. He's going to keep going. The amazing part with him is that I believe it's the last 3 years, he's been a 29% three-point shooter in the regular season and a 37.8 three-point percentage shooter in the playoffs. For whatever reason, he gets this thing going in the playoffs. He works to it. He dials it up. And listen, right now, he makes the Miami Heat a real threat.
And Geltzie, speaking of the Heat now, you go in as the 8 seed. We saw him lose their lead in the play-in. That's how they got the 8 seed. Did this series change how you feel about the Heat? Because we know the roster's not as good as the other teams. It wasn't as good as the Bucks, I'll be honest. And we still, gentlemen, swept them. Did this change your outlook on the Heat watching this series?
Has to, Channing, right? I mean, I thought their upside was capped this year. I thought the Bucks would sweep them. I really did, based on talent for talent. But I will also say this, and Channing, you know where I'm going with this, because I have always, even at times when your listeners have been down on him, 10 ways coming and going, he's the best coach in the NBA. He outcoached Mike Budenholzer in such a way here. Love fouls out, and somehow by going small, he gets Coach Bud to put the guy that was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting on the bench in Brook Lopez because he decides to go smaller. And Bud panicked and decided to match up there. Listen, I was killing Spo after the first play-in loss against Atlanta because I looked at it and said, how are you getting out-rebounded that way when you have Kevin Love on your bench? Why did you even bring in Kevin Love if you're not going to put him in the game? Kevin Love last night, 15 points, 12 assists, made an enormous impact in this series, and now is going to have a major role in the next series. Spo finds different ways to do it, finds different guys to do it with. I love what he's done with the starting lineup because it makes the bench formidable. How many other coaches in the league wouldn't have put Kyle Lowry back in the starting lineup when he got healthy? The answer is 0. Everybody else would have just slotted him back in there for whatever reason, mostly because a lot of coaches would have been afraid not to. He's not afraid of anything, this guy. He's going to do it his way, up and down the line. And listen, the Heat, right now, the Heat are a real threat. I'm not going to say the Knicks are a really good draw for them, but after you beat the number 1 team in the NBA that had 58 wins, there's not any team that you're going to come up against in a playoff series that you're going to worry about in any way, shape, or form. It certainly is. The Knicks played great against the Cavs, and I love the way the Knicks look. But if you're the Heat, you're surely not afraid of this Knicks team.
And Geltzie, quickly, because you talk about Budenholzer, how is he a 2-time Coach of the Year? Does he need to be drug tested? Like, he messed up so many. The challenge call, the end of regulation, end of overtime. Like, what happened to him yesterday? Was he paying attention?
I wonder, first of all, the end of regulation, Shannon. How do you not realize that you have that time out there? You're that shell-shocked when that happens that you don't realize that you have a timeout sitting there in your hip pocket? I mean, come on. Like, that to me was the most unforgivable thing of all. Half second left on the clock, okay? So I mean, you end up in a situation where each 0.4 is enough time for a catch and shoot. So it was hard for me to understand where Coach Bud came from. And from what I'm hearing, I don't know how long he's going to be around there, guys.
Yeah, you know? I mean, he can't be long for it. It doesn't. It just wouldn't add up. How do the Heat and Knicks match up, though? I know you said it might be a good draw for them. I mean, what do you think? Because again, you thought Bucks were going to sweep the Heat. What do you think this series does? How do you think it plays out?
Well, all right. So first of all, I think it's going to be a long series. I think it goes to the end. I will say this: the Knicks will defend Jimmy Butler much better than the Bucks defended Jimmy Butler, just because Tom's going to give Jimmy several looks. He'll draw some Josh Hart. He'll draw some lanky length in Barrett. He'll draw some muscle and some beef in Randall. He'll roll different guys at Jimmy to try to get him uncomfortable. And keep one thing in mind, that's the big subplot here. Is there a coach on the planet that knows Jimmy Butler better than Tom? There isn't. And that little cat and mouse game and how Tom presents different looks at Jimmy is going to be one of the more fun things you could ever imagine in terms of a subplot. So that's going to be wild. But listen, I think the Knicks match up pretty well with the Heat. The Knicks are they have more quality depth. I think what Spo did with the starting lineup on the bench is going to be really important here against the Knicks to continue that, just because the Knicks are deep. Now, that's also, I say that the Knicks are deep. That's under the assumption that Julius Randle's going to be able to start the series. He hurt the ankle last night. Doesn't appear to be that bad an injury, but he re-injured an ankle that he hurt in a Miami Heat game back in March. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on there. And then, listen, the other thing is the Knicks have been, and they've been playing very well this way, but they've been playing short of wing without Quentin Grimes. Now, I don't think Grimes is that relevant a player in this series. First of all, I can't imagine Tom's going to have Grimes spend a lot of time on Jimmy Butler. And you've seen what's happened there. Hart and Quickly and Barrett have sucked up those extra Grimes minutes and done a great job in doing it. So that's not as much of a concern. What I will say is going to be an interesting matchup is going to be the big guys. I mean, Mitchell Robinson was the reason the Knicks won that game last night. He's an absolute animal on the glass. And when you look at what happened in that Atlanta playing game, how the Heat got assaulted on the offensive glass, that is a major strength of the Knicks. Okay, so Bam obviously is always an important player in what the Heat do, and the Heat will certainly play a lot of their zone and force the Knicks into jump shots. But the other guy that's going to be really key here is Kevin Love. They're going to need him to be a defensive rebounding force against the Knicks because of the way the Knicks attack the offensive glass. And by the way, it's not just Robinson. Josh Hart's the best rebounding wing in the league.
Geltzie, have you ever seen, I mean, you've covered the NBA for so long, right? Have you ever seen some audios just firing off?
I got that it was audio. I was curious what it was.
Solana hit a button while he was trying to get the question out of his mouth. That's what happened.
What was that?
I had the box score up from one of the websites.
Oh,
and it just
I got
fired
you.
off.
And there was a like a video ad.
Geltzie, have you ever seen this, or is it unprecedented? Not just from an 8 seed taking down a 1 seed and what the Heat did, but I'm talking about a team that was bottom 5 statistically in any type of category you want to look at, whether you want to look at advanced stats or just regular box score numbers. The Heat were bottom 5 offensively through an 82-game regular season sample size, and after 5 games in the regular season or in the postseason, are number 1 in offensive rating, 3-point shooting percentage. Their leading player is averaging almost 15 points more per game in the playoffs at 65% shooting from the. Have you ever seen something like this, really, where a team elevates their game, not just a little bit, but I'm talking about literally from last in the league almost in every category to number 1 in the league in every category in the most crucial time of the season, the postseason?
No, but I'll also say this, Solana, that's something that going into the second round will revert to the mean a little bit. And if you want to tell me, and I won't disagree with you, if you want to tell me that the Heat underperformed in the regular season based upon what they could do, I won't argue with you about that. I think that's fair. With that said, I think they've overperformed a little bit here, certainly in the way that they've shot the basketball. And again, a big part of that is Butler and what he does. but it's also listen, Robinson has shot the ball very, very well. You had that one big time game out of Lowry. There's been some different things that have come into play here. I mean, one of the guys that you guys know this from all the times I'm on your show, I love Caleb Martin, and he's played a fantastic role for this team. But I do think there's some reversion to the mean there for the Heat, but that doesn't mean they can't win. Like it's, one of the beautiful parts about a Knicks Heat series is that the way these two teams are built, who their coaches are, will make this a good old fashioned 1990s street fight. All right. Keep in mind, last time they got together, and I know they played against the Heatles in 12. The Knicks played there in 2012. But when you go back into the 90s, the current guy coaching the Knicks was the right-hand man of the guy that coached the Knicks then. Tom Thibodeau was the first assistant sitting next to Jeff Van Gundy on those teams. And the guy that's coaching the Heat is Pat Riley's protege and Eric Spoelstra. This is going to be a roll your sleeves up and just a Rocky Balboa, Apollo Creed to the 15th round type of battle. That's what we are going to get here. So again, the Heat stats have been so pretty against Milwaukee. They're not going to be as pretty against the Knicks. It doesn't mean that they can't win the series.
Yeah, I am looking for. I think all Heat fans, I think Knicks fans too, are really looking forward to this series. The Knicks are 4-point favorites on Sunday, game 1. I made this bet already, Geltzieler. You tell me what you think. I bet Heat win game 1 straight up and Heat win the series, plus 280.
I like the Heat win the series plus 280 a little bit more. I do think that with the way, this was so emotional for Miami, I almost feel like coming back to a game 1 scenario, there's going to be a little bit of a crash. The Knicks won their series more with it was consistency. The Heat had 2 comebacks here late in the fourth quarter against a team that won 58 games. It's not impossible not to be on cloud 9. And I think this becomes a little bit more difficult at this stage when you get the Knicks in the Garden. So listen, I'm not arguing with you over the Heat winning the series. I haven't made a pick yet. I'm not sure where I'm going to go, but I will not tell you you're crazy and believe in mind the Heat can win the series. I absolutely think that they can. Game 1, I mean, listen, you want to think they can steal one on the road? It's absolutely possible. But at one point or another here, and we saw this last year with the Heat against the Celtics in that conference final series, there's a dud coming. The Heat always tend to have them at a certain point in time, but we do know this: when the dud comes, there's no spillover into the next game.
And Geltzie, I got to ask you about this. Actually, I think me and Hawk are on opposite sides of this with the Giannis comments about failure of this season with the Bucks. How did you feel about his post-game press conference? Because there's 2 sides on this one.
Channing, I didn't like it. I did not listen, I love Giannis, and I think Giannis is wonderful for the sport. But I did not like it. I didn't think I kind of felt like, you know what? You want to tell me that last year you went to game 7 of the second round, you didn't have Chris Middleton. You want to tell me you don't see that season as a failure? You can make that case. There is no planet that when you won 58 games to lose to an 8 seed and 5 games in the first round that your season is not a failure. Furthermore, this particular player, who is the best player in the game, was 10 of 23 from the free throw line in a game that your team lost by 2 points. Eric Nem asked a legitimate question. Now, Giannis is a gentleman and got aggravated with it and tried very hard to not go crazy. But his whole analogy of, if Michael Jordan didn't win the championship those other 9 years, were all those other 9 years failures? Well, some may have been and some may not have been. And my point is, you want to say, well, you asked me the same question last year, Eric. Last year, the scenario was different. Last year, you can say it may not have been a failure. You can say that, you know what, we took it as far as we could take it without Chris. This year, to lose in this round, and all due respect to the Heat, and Jimmy Butler played fantastic, to lose in this round, I'm sorry, your season was a failure. You were a championship or bust team coming in here. Now, again, extenuating circumstances come up. Giannis got banged up. You were still expected to get out of the first round. It was not an unfair question. And frankly, I will tell you this. If LeBron gives the same answer, I think he takes a whole lot more heat in the media than Giannis does. Now, who agreed with me, Channing? You or Hawk?
I like the heartfelt, hey, we tried hard and it's not a failure. We tried. But I love Giannis, but he stunk in the fourth quarter last night.
But Hawk, the premise that, it's not failure. We're trying our hardest. That makes sense. But when you're set up with the MVP, you give up 5 second-round picks to bring Jay Crowder in. You have multiple All-Stars on your team. That is a failure. Y'all were expected as the number one seed to by far do more than the damn first round. And
but I understand in that moment, though, not wanting to go, yeah, this was a fail. Like, I understand in that moment searching for something that makes you feel like it wasn't a failure. He knew that he stunk it up in the fourth quarter. Him personally, even on that final play where Grayson Allen ends up with the ball, Giannis didn't want it. Giannis got rid of the ball real quick, and then he laid on the ground up until there was a couple of seconds. Like, Giannis knew that he stunk in the fourth quarter, and I think he was searching within himself for something to make him feel a little bit better.
But here's the thing, Hawk. You can love Giannis, and I love Giannis. Giannis he is a breath of fresh air in all of sports, and think he was full of crap on that podium last night. Because I do love Giannis, and I think he was full of crap on that podium last night. You know what? It was a failure. And at a certain point in time, you have to acknowledge that. Yes, you're going to go back. You're going to work hard. You're going to figure out how to get better. Everybody's going to try to do their job much better. And Giannis, you can guarantee, he's going to spend a lot of time in the offseason on the free throw line because he obviously didn't last offseason. So he'll do that. With that said, his answer was garbage. His answer had a whole lot to do with excuse making. I understand the big picture thinking involved in that moment, but it also reeked of him lacking accountability. I would have loved for him to look at Eric Nem and say, listen, I failed my teammates tonight. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because that comment I just said resembles the truth a whole lot more than what Giannis said.
A friend of mine texted me, Michael didn't win the championship, 9 times or whatever, but he also sank his free throws with his eyes closed. So let's leave that comparison out there. Giannis, I love him, but I mean, he was like embarrassingly bad at the end of that game. I don't know if he just ran out of gas or if the Heat defense just stymied him so much that he didn't know if he was coming or going. Brian Geltzieler, Sirius XM NBA Radio, NBA TV as well. We love talking hoops with you. Thank you for making some time for us.